Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our virtual open house. I wish we could be meeting in person, and soon enough, I hope that we are. I wanted to start by just telling you a little bit about how today is going to go. First off, this open house is going to be a kickoff to a series of webinars that we are going to be hosting in our upper school. We will be having ranging topics from athletics, academics, student life. We'll have panels for parents, but all kinds of different webinars that will get at some of the topics that you are interested in learning about more in depth. So these will be also recorded, as is this webinar being recorded. So should there be something you would like to talk about or see more of, and you didn't quite know how we phrase something, you can go back and watch this and feel absolutely free to do that. The other thing that I want to point out to you is that we are accepting questions, and we will do our very best to get to all of them. The way that you can communicate those questions to us is, and it should be in the bottom of your screen, you should see a little tab that says Q&A. Please click there and type your questions there. If there's a question that you have for our panelists, but we can answer it for you by typing, we will do that. But I strongly encourage you that as we're on the various topics that we're going to be talking, I would like for you to be asking those questions so that we can answer what you want to know more so than what we want to talk to you about, because that's most important to us. And then finally, I would just say that we will have a hard stop at 10:30, as all of us are on screens a lot more than we have been in the past. However, my colleague Sylvester Cutler and I will both be sticking around after that if you had any follow-up questions that you wanted to talk about, but all the panelists will be excused by 10:30. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our head of school. His name is Steve Hancock, and he is here to give you a greeting to USM and talk to you a little bit about us. Mr. Hancock.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I know this is not maybe what we had expected to be happening for an open house, but I think we're going to be able to give a lot of good information today that will help you as you're on this journey of trying to figure out where the best place is for your child in upper school. Not too long ago, I was really faced with a similar decision. My decision was where was going to be my next school that I was going to lead. I grew up in Waukesha and had the opportunity to teach and lead in schools in Atlanta and Princeton, New Jersey, and in Memphis. And I was looking for a school that would match with my philosophy of education. And what I really believe in is that schools must create an environment where students feel safe and valued and celebrated and known. And so as I was looking at opportunities that existed for me, I was looking for how a school's mission might line up with what I felt personally. I'm so excited that I found that here at USM, a school that believes in what we call the common trust, where we try to treat everyone with respect and trust and honesty and fairness and kindness. And these tenets of the common trust match so perfectly with my idea of trying to keep students feeling known and celebrated and valued and safe. And so I didn't have to look much further when I discovered that University School was looking for a new head of school. It's true, this is my first year. I've been on the job since July 1st. And what a first year it's been, of course, with all of the excitement that's helped us start the school year. But I'm so proud of the team that's here, incredible professionals. We banded together to find a way to bring school live and in person for as many as would want it. And it's been going great. The students are so excited to be back in school. The teachers are working so incredibly hard to present their curriculum during this time, but it's more than just curriculum. It's the way in which we connect with each other. It's the way in which we help create community. And what I love to see is when I walk around the school is how the community is still here, even during this time when we have to be socially distanced. And I know over these next weeks and months, you'll be able to hear more about how we're creating community and how we're creating an environment where students can learn and thrive. One of the things that drew me to the school was the fact that USM is such a leader within this community. You don't have to go too far in Milwaukee to find an alum who got their start at USM and is making incredible differences in Milwaukee and beyond. And what I love to do is to talk to those alums and hear how university school molded them into the person they are today. They talk about their teachers who put so much passion into them. They talk about their classmates. They talk about the ability to be leaders, and they talk about the ability to be servants. And I just really appreciate that about USM. And our hope is that today, through today's webinar and others like it, that you'll start to get a sense of that yourself, of what a special and amazing place USM is. We're a private, independent school, which means we can make our own decisions that best suits our community. And that's never been on more display than during this time of COVID-19, where we made decisions of how we would teach online and now how we would teach in person. And that ability to be independent and nimble, and it really has served us well. And it's served me well as an independent school leader over these past 30 years. For now, I'm going to stop talking and look forward to joining with you for the rest of this program as we learn more about this great school. Thanks again for being with us today.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Now I want to turn it over to our assistant head of upper school. She is also somebody who does all of the scheduling for classes and things of that nature, but she is here to talk to you and welcome you to our upper school. So without ado, Ms. Boley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Hello, all. I am Sue Boley, the assistant head of upper school, and Stuart Cushman, our head of upper school, is out of town this weekend, so he cannot be with us. But I'm really happy to be here with you, and I just want to give you a short welcome. And what I'm going to do is just have a couple of guiding principles in that welcome. And the first guiding principle is going to come from our school a mission statement, so an excerpt from it. And it reads, "We strive to ignite in our students a passion for learning, leadership, and service. The school prepares each student as an individual for success in higher education and a life of purpose." And to expand on this first principle, I'd like to share a guiding principle specifically for the upper school. And that is, we want to nurture students to find joy and passion in learning that feeds their curiosity and offers them a balanced life. And so we really focus on that balanced life. We have a very strong academic program. In the freshman and sophomore years, it's designed to build a very solid academic foundation. And then in the junior and senior years, we offer a wide array of very rich and advanced required courses and also electives for the juniors and seniors. So we have this strong academic program focusing on developing the child to be successful now in the present and for the future. But we also look to nurture the whole child. And so as Steve Hancock mentioned, we have the common trust. Respect, trust, honesty, fairness, and kindness are something that we really value to create a sense of community and a sense of purpose that goes beyond just the individual, but the individual within the context of living and being with other people and contributing to that community. So overall, I'll just say that we not only do have a very strong academic commitment to building, the individual experience, but also to building that community experience and nurturing growth and potential for the whole child, and really to have that experience of a lifetime, which is our tagline, which I have 3 children that went to university school, and I can testify that it really, truly was an experience for a lifetime that still lives with them as young adults. So I will stop there. I'll be on the panel later on. You can ask me specific questions, and welcome. I'm really glad to be with you here today.
Thank you, Sue. So our next guest is Tim Williams. He is our athletic director here at University School. Unfortunately, Mr. Williams, or fortunately, has to get out to our playing fields pretty quickly because we have some games going on today, and he needs to be out there to manage those events. So he is going to give his welcome, but as I said at my opening, we will have a webinar which will be far more interactive with Mr. Williams later this fall. So do feel free to tune into that. But for now, I'd like to say, Mr. Williams, welcome, and I'd like you to give yours.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. I really wish we could see each other, but I'm kind of staring at my screen, looking at my own face, which is somewhat jarring early on the Saturday morning, but still all right. We had a really exciting night last night, which capped off an exciting week, which actually continues today here at USM. It was our homecoming week, and although we didn't get to do all of the normal homecoming festivities that we normally do, with the COVID-19 restrictions, it was still just a fantastic week, and really capped off yesterday morning with the Milwaukee Brewers running sausages, racing our own Willie the Wildcat mascot to start off the day, and then culminated by a football game last night, and then games with our soccer and field hockey teams today. So anyway, that is just a sampling of things that we are doing here. You know, we have over 23 sports that are in the upper school, and there is really something for everyone here at USM. And you know, I've really been proud and impressed that you know, even beyond the offerings that we have here, we've moved to kind of create opportunities where there have not been opportunities in the past by creating some co-op situations. And we have that in for the first time in softball this spring. We also have co-ops in our girls hockey and our wrestling programs as well as swimming. So there are a lot of opportunities that all of our kids get very, very involved in. The participation rate from last year actually dropped, but it only dropped by, I think, a percentage point. And so I think we're at 89% of our upper school students are participating in at least one sport throughout the school year, which is absolutely incredible. And I've been at now 4 different independent schools, and I've never been at one that's even approached that. And it's amazing how we can have that type of participation, but also have the great amount of competition that we show. And you know, that's really what we're all about, is getting kids involved and teaching them things through athletics. I really believe that athletics is an extension of the classroom, and that the things that they are being taught in the classroom can then be either reinforced or enhanced in what they're doing with their sport teams, and learning things that are real, true life lessons, things like responsibility, things like learning how to deal with adversity, how to be part of a team, how to lead, and how to follow. And those are things that just stick with you forever. And I'll end with this. I was talking to a group of alumni and current parents last night, and talking to them about the value of the USM experience, which they probably knew better than me. But the positivity that is flowing up and down these hallways from our students to our faculty members to our coaches and staff is really palpable. And kids are extremely happy to be back at school. I think that all of us that have had school-age kids know that have heard their child at one time or another say, "Oh, do I have to go to school today?" Well, I don't think any child here is saying that at all, at any day. They're so happy to be here, so happy to be in class, and so happy to be playing sports again. So, and I echo that. I think it's great. So we've got a full slate of things going today, actually starting at 10 a.m. and lasting probably till about 2:30 or 3. And if you have a chance, please log on to YouTube today, and you can check some of those out. We have our field hockey playing at 10 a.m. our varsity field hockey team. And then we have our varsity boys soccer team playing at 1 p.m. And you can look for our USM Athletics YouTube site and be able to watch those if you'd like. I'd love to introduce you to USM Athletics that way. So with that said, I'll turn it back over to the admissions office. You guys are in great hands, and I look forward to maybe speaking with you again at a later date. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tim. So this is the part where we now turn it over to you as the group, the audience, with specific topics in mind. So we are right now going to be shifting to academics. We are happy to be joined by two of our master teachers, as well as Ms. Boley coming back in as the assistant head of upper school. Our two teachers, Mr. Ben Zarwell, he teaches in our history department, and Dr. Amber Bockham, who teaches in our sciences. And both are here to talk about some of the questions that you might have regarding academics here at USM. Specifically, if you want to know a little bit about the classroom experience from the teacher's perspective, later on, we're going to be joined by a student panel who can give that to you from a student perspective as well. I do have some questions lined up that I'm happy to ask, but again, we do want to hear more from you than from me. So please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A. But I will start with, and I'll ask Mr. Zarwell if you would mind addressing this question. Tell us a little bit about the transition experience for new students academically, and what are some advice that you have or challenges that they may have?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Pardon me. I think what is often challenging for students when they transition to university school from another institution is, in part, it's a cultural shift. So it's a smaller school. There's a lot of kids who have been in the school for many years prior to the upper school. There's students who maybe are even lifers. And so one thing that often can be challenging is when new students arrive and they have to kind of get to know a whole new group of kids, many of whom have known each other for a very long time. So I think that's significant. In terms of academics, what we find is that students, they may come from situations where they have had a lot more sort of day-to-day hand-holding. I don't know if that's the word I want, but that when they come into the high school, there's a point at which the teachers and the faculty really are looking for these students to try and increasingly advocate for themselves. And of course, there's a lot of support from the teachers as well, especially the freshman teachers. We have a really terrific freshman team, and much of what they do is to help kids become more accustomed to the upper school, and especially to try and get them more accustomed to doing academic work at university school. So I think that, without going on and on and on, it seems to me that two things that are really different for students. On the one hand, it can be a cultural adjustment, and the other piece of that is an academic adjustment, and really encouraging students to become increasingly independent in their and take ownership for their academic work. And we try to guide them in there and help them become more academically independent without making it overwhelmingly obvious. So it's kind of this dance we do with the students where we really encourage them to be more independent, to contact us directly, to speak to us directly as faculty. But at the same time, we have to keep an eye on them. And then if they do seem to be falling through the cracks, we reach out. So I hope that helps. I hope that's a start.
No, that's wonderful, and I appreciate that. One of the things I should have done before, and I will do now, is ask each of you just to give your background. How did you get to USM? Before I do that, Heidi, I do see your question, and I will be answering that later in the program when we talk about what it takes, what our steps are for admissions and things like that. So I will get to that, I promise. But I'd start with you, Dr. Bockham, if you could just give us your background and what was your path to USM?
Hi, good morning. My background is I got my bachelor's degree in physics and mathematics. I did some research at NASA, and NASA is a big proponent of outreach, so making science accessible for other people. So that was a skill I learned early on in my science career. After my bachelor's degree, I decided to go to graduate school and focus a little bit more on the biology and chemistry side of science. That really got me super excited to do science all the time. So I ended up with my PhD just recently in biochemistry. While I was working there, I continued doing my science outreach. I'm all about making science accessible for people of all ages. I really like science, and I love to share that with just about anybody who would listen. And then after that, I got my start officially teaching at Alverno College as a part-time instructor. So I taught physical chemistry, biochemistry laboratories, and general physics. And while I was there, I was approached by one of the science teachers at USM to judge the science fair. And I've judged science fairs before. Usually as a high school student, I'd go to the middle school and judge their science fair. It was nothing like that. I came to USM. These are high caliber, undergraduate level, even, early graduate school level science research projects. And I was absolutely floored. So when USM posted a position for a science teacher, I thought this is my way to, get involved with an incredible science faculty and a wonderful group of students that really are excited to be, learning scientists.
Great. Thank you, Amber. I appreciate that very much. Ben, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your long path to USM?
Yeah, certainly. My long path to USM began when I was in 8th grade, actually. So I'm one of those USM alums who found his way back to the institution. I grew up in Wauwatosa, and I had been attending Longfellow Junior High, and for a variety of reasons, my parents, they transferred me to USM, and so I came in 8th grade. And as you know, actually, this is relevant for what I was talking about before, which was that it can be a culture shock. Now, I realized that was like 1983, 1982, 83, and now we're talking about the year 2020. But I think that some things probably are very similar. I came from Longfellow Junior High, where it was at times it felt like the jungle over there. And what I mean by that is that it was, there were a lot of middle school kids, and they were really running the place in some ways. And I came to USM, and one of the things that was really interesting to me was I actually found I was very skeptical at first, because the other students in the 8th grade were so nice, like consistently. I kept waiting to get hazed and teased, and it wasn't happening. And that's not to say that that never happens. I don't know, but it actually was a huge culture shock for me. I found it really, really surprising, and the adjustment was difficult for me. My academic adjustment was challenging as well. So I attended USM through high school. I then went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I was attending school there. My intention was to teach in some way, shape, or form. And at the time, I was thinking I would probably, just stay on in school forever, and then become a PhD and maybe teach at a university. But in 2006, I completed my master's degree, but I was kind of looking around, and I kind of felt like I needed to get my feet on the ground and do what I consider to be some real work, right? Not just sort of the writing papers and so on, going to seminars and talking about postmodern literature and things like that. So what I did was I went to the School of Education at Madison, and they said, well, you don't have a teaching certification, so you might want to look at independent schools, and the best thing you can do is go back to your old independent school and visit. And when you visit there, you'll get a better sense of exactly what a day in the life of an independent school teacher looks like. So I returned, I visited for one day, and at the end of that day, one of my former teachers said he needed a week-long substitute teacher. And I came back in April, and I taught his history classes for a week. And I loved it. The kids were just really enthusiastic, and they were so smart and funny. And the following year, what happened was there was a longtime history teacher who, regrettably, she passed away. And I got a call from the school. They were looking for some people at the last minute. And then I joined the faculty in 1997 part-time. And in 1998, the school decided to hire me full-time because they liked what I was doing. So that's what brings me to USM. And I've been here since then. So since 1997, I've been teaching at USM.
Great. Thanks very much, Ben. I do want to encourage, we have about 10 minutes left of this section. So if you have questions about academics and the classroom experience from a teacher's perspective, please feel free to type them in the Q&A. I would like to ask you, Sue, a different question if I could. Is what kind of characteristics do you think make for a successful student at USM? And I will say this because you are not only an employee and assistant head of upper school, but you're also a mother of an alum at USM. So I think you have a lot of perspectives that you can offer on this. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, you know, my career has been a classroom teacher. This is my second year at university school as assistant head, and really my primary responsibility is academic dean. And combined with my experience in the classroom, being a mother of 3 graduates of USM, and now as assistant head of university school, characteristics for success, I really feel like we work with all kinds of students, and that the teachers are so great at developing personal relationships that I see, you know, I see all kinds of characteristics in students rising up, being nurtured, creating that independence, as Ben was discussing, you know, learning to self-advocate and really become responsible for their own learning, while they're also in this community where it's not just about the individual, but it's about this community experience as well. And I think Amber, speaking to her passion for making science accessible to everybody, I have witnessed that. And I have visited, last year I visited every classroom at least twice, even when we went online. I visited every online classroom, and I just strongly endorse the fact that our faculty is able to reach really every type of student and bring out the best in them.
Thank you, Sue. We do have a question that I would like to pose to the group, and I think, Sue, you might be best to answer this, but I think all of us probably could. I would like you to know, because the question was, is the curriculum that we use similar to other private schools? And we all know that there's a lot more that we do than most of the private schools. So what I'd like you to do, instead of answering it that way and saying yes or no, tell us some of the differences that we have from other private schools, because independent schools are very different than a parochial private school, like an MUHS or DSHA, things like that. So what makes us different?
Sure. So, you know, we have an array of graduation requirements: 4 years of English, 2 years of fine arts, 3 years of history, 3 years of math, 3 years of science, 1.5 years of physical education, and 2 years of the same world language. But those are like minimal graduation requirements. All students go way above and beyond those graduation requirements. And of course, we have the whole array of AP offerings, advanced placement offerings in all of our different disciplines. And we also have this very rich array of electives: astronomy, anatomy and physiology, women's health, economics, moral philosophy, world religions, America as a global power, linear algebra, which goes even beyond the AP level of math, creative writing, digital journalism, narrative film, and you know, the list goes on of all the really rich electives that are available to students as well. And I think, you know, aside from just a very like wide and deep curriculum for students to experience, is the opportunity to dive deep into some specific areas of interest through our transcript designation programs. And so this is where students earn a distinction that goes on their transcript because they've done study that goes above and beyond what happens in the classroom. So we have 4 of those. We have a distinction in global scholarship, a distinction in innovation, which is through our beautiful innovation center and robotics program. We have a distinction in service leadership and a distinction in science research, which is what Amber was speaking to earlier. So I'll stop there and see if there's any further questions, but those would be, I think, some ways that we really go above and beyond what might be happening at other schools.
Perfect. Thank you. And I do appreciate that. And the other thing that I would add to that from my perspective is just that you also need to look at the style of teaching. For example, in our English classrooms, we have a roundtable method.
Yeah,
We don't
right.
have rows of desks. In fact, in our whole school, pre-COVID, we only have about 2 classrooms, I believe, with rows of desks. Every other classroom, they're in a circle, it's discussion, in some fashion. We just have something where kids can interact with each other. We're also a project-based school, project-based learning, which means that many of the assignments you're going to be given, you'll be working collaboratively with other kids. It's not just about giving you a worksheet, you fill it out, turn it back in. This is a school that is going to be very different in its style of teaching, but also just by nature of the things that our kids are going to be doing. And we have a student panel coming up in a couple minutes that will talk to you a little bit about some of those experiences as well.
And Eric, may I just add to that, our class size is small. The maximum size class will be 20 students, which is pretty rare that it actually gets to that 20 cap. So we have small class sizes. And then I think it's really important to emphasize that writing, like students graduate being able to write, not just English writing, but like writing across the curriculum in ways that they get to college and they're like blown away by, like they think they're just an average writer, and they get to college and they realize how they really learn to become a good writer no matter what the discipline is that they're studying.
Yep. That's really helpful. And I would encourage you at some point to look at our school profile, which will tell you the statistics piece, but I'm more interested in the story piece. We are the best school in the state of Wisconsin statistically. So that part is pretty well known. What I think is more important though is how do we get there? And so I would like to, I just saw a question coming up about an advisory system. That is the very next category. So Mary, thank you for the question. We'll get to it. What I would like to do though is ask Amber and Ben, if you could both, before we close here, talk briefly about your classroom experience. What does your classroom look like? And again, I would urge you to think about this pre-COVID. Amber, why don't you start?
Sounds great. So in our science classrooms, I teach all levels. So I teach biology, chemistry, and physics. In all of those levels, we have the students in the lab as often as possible. So when it comes to science education, one of my favorite pieces and the students' favorite pieces is actually doing something with the science. So they get the exposure to the instrumentation that they'll see in college. They get exposure to the techniques that they'll see in college. And we've had alums come back and say, oh, thank you for your chemistry lesson on acids and bases. I was totally prepared for my general chemistry lab in Chem 101 at my, at Dartmouth, right? They're prepared for the types of techniques to use. So I think that that's something that really stands out for us. And we do a lot of this project-based idea in science as well. So for example, in physics, we start every new topic with an experiment. So the students, they figure out the relationship between physical variables instead of me telling them, right? Because if I tell them, then, it's kind of fuzzy. But if they experience it, those are the things that they'll remember when it comes to, solving problems and moving forward in other science classes. So that's something that I like to bring to my classrooms.
Perfect. Ben, you're going to close.
So
what does your classroom look like?
I know we don't have much time. So what I would say is that in my classroom, we have sort of modular tables that we can move around as we choose. For many years, they've kind of been trapezoid with 2 students per table on one side of the trapezoid. And we'll either have that in a kind of a circle format or occasionally in rows if there's something I'm presenting where I really need people all be focused at the board. But also I will put them into pods. and we do that. And I just, once again, I'm trying to be very cognizant of the time. It's 9:40 right now, so just cut me off whenever. But I do want to, I want to kind of address what Amber said about alums. And we've seen that similar thing happen with our students from history. And I kind of lump history and English together in the sense that both of them are primarily focused on communication. So whether it's the history class or the English class, we spend a lot of time trying to really, really emphasize these essential skills. I tell the kids it's because they're citizens, and you know, a couple of years they're in the big game, and that's what we need. But I've had kids more than once return from university school and say that they felt very, very prepared for doing humanities work at the university level, at the college level. You know, we have a global studies seminar for our global studies scholars who, this diploma designate program, and I teach the seminar, and I have only about, you know, I've had anywhere between 7 and 19 kids in it each year. And they do a long haul research paper, research and writing on a topic of their choice. And I've had everything. I was just jotting stuff down, just thinking about it. People have done fantastic papers on football hooligans and ways to deliver clean water in Africa, and the bleaching of coral reefs, everything to Chinese military capability, right? I had a kid who did that many years ago. He went on to college, very successful, actually was in the US military. Now he's going back to graduate school. So we have kids who they get interested in something. We try to give them an opportunity to pursue those interests. And we really consistently seek to challenge them with writing assignments and then also presentation assignments that encourage them to hone their communication skills. Because no matter what you go into as an adult, no matter what your area of expertise ultimately is, if you can't communicate, you're not in the same position as those of us who are more adept at that.
Ben, thank you so much. I do have to cut you off because we do need to get to our students, but I do appreciate that, and you're spot on with that. So I do appreciate that. I also want to say thanks to the teachers and Ms. Boley who joined us today. Dr. Bachman, thank you. Ben Zarwell, thank you. Suboli, thank you. And now we're going to turn it over to our students. And we already have a question in the queue for our students, and we have with us today, we have Caitlin Miller, Thomas Wright, and Dara Amaloja. We also have Charlie Huzio, who's our Dean of Students. And I'm gonna start with you, Mr. Huzio, because the question that came up was, do we have an advisory system? And also, do we have a peer mentoring program? So if you could talk to those two types of things, I would be very appreciative.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Peters. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you here in Zoom land, as I call it. And I'm thankful that we have some students here with us this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturdays to speak about your experience as students. So for your first point about an advising system, yes, we do. I think it's a real strength and a differentiating feature of our upper school. Students are placed into an advising program the year they arrive, and then stay with that advisor and with those advisees for the duration of their upper school experience. And I think that's really beneficial for the relationship to develop, because students can go through their upper school experience with the inevitable highs and lows that come with it, whether that's in academics or social life, or through sports or through the arts, and they have someone who is with them, and they are able to be a person for that student to reach out to, or if the student doesn't take that initiative to reach out to that adult, the adult can check in with that person and check in with that student and see how they're doing, and that is a really good first point of contact for parents as well, to just get a pulse on how the student and how their child is doing. Twice a year, the advisors have conferences with parents, and that's a really beneficial part of the successful communication in our upper school. In an advising program, students will spend time with each other, having fun, playing games, but also working on things like preparing for a college guidance seminar, or observing senior speeches that each of our seniors give as a graduation requirement, or working through some of the social and emotional curriculum that myself and the other 4 class deans work on, to give students an opportunity to think about things like, what would you do in a situation where you're asked between doing something that's right by your friends but also right by the school, and they can like role play that and think about that. I think as far as like the peer mentoring programs, we do have a house program at USM where each student is placed into one of our 4 houses, and with that house they are also placed into like a family. And just last week we had students spread outside all over the campus, socially distanced, like meeting their family members for the first time. And that's one of the ways we formally have sort of a peer mentoring program. I think the other ways that really plays out functionally is in sports and in the arts. When students join USM, they're not just students, but they are artists and they are athletes as well. And it's really in those programs where the older students will naturally take on a mentoring, caring, shepherding role of the new students. And it's not a culture where students are initiated or hazed in any way. It's very loving and supportive, and our upperclassmen really go out of their way to think about how can we welcome students. Just this year, all of our new students, was assigned like an individual guide, and then they were contacted by that guide and sort of able to ask individual questions of that person. And also we have a pretty robust clubs program in the upper school as well. And that's another way for students to explore their interests, to be able to connect with students from multiple different grades. And I think that's a really, really good strength of our program, as far as just helping students transition into a space and being with peers to do that, but also having a key adult point person along that journey as well.
Thanks, Charlie. And I would add, as an advisor, advisors are always a safe spot for kids. So if there ever is a time where they're having a rough day or just need a place to go, just be, an advisor serves as that function in many respects. I'd like to also turn it over to our kids, and I'm going to start with you, Caitlin, if you don't mind. I'd like for you, Caitlin, to talk to us a little bit, since you have gone through the advising program and you're in your 4th year with your advisor. Could you talk to us a little bit about what that relationship is like for you, and how you use your advisor?
Yes. So actually, I transferred into USM as a sophomore, so I've only been here 3 years. So I kind of have the perspective of being at a public school where there is no advisor, and then coming in and having an advisor. And I think it's been extremely beneficial, especially because like on the first day of school, my sophomore year, I knew no one. I was really nervous. I didn't know where I was going. And Miss Yuan, who's my advisor, she found me right away. She introduced me to 2 girls in my advising, Manya and Juliana. And they basically stayed with me for the entire morning and took me where I needed to go, told me about the school, and just helped me feel like I was, not a new person who didn't know what they were doing. And on top of that, Miss Yuan also, she was new the year before coming in as a teacher. So she kind of is like learned about USM with us. And I think part of that is like, as a student, we see certain things and we feel certain things that sometimes the teachers don't. Like we get really stressed, especially being a senior and having these these applications due. And, our schedules are getting worse and worse. And it's just like, she's there to just say, if you guys need to take a deep breath, like we came into advising the other day and she's like, everyone close your eyes, take a deep breath, relax, just, don't think about school, don't think about anything, just take a deep breath. And I think it's just really nice to have someone like that who really cares about your well-being and is there for you as a teacher, but also as a person.
Thanks. That was great. Thomas, I'd like to ask you if you could talk a little bit about some of the homework pieces. The other day we had another one of these sessions and that came up, and the questions are similar to things about to talk a little bit about how much homework do you get and that sort of thing. Just walk us through a typical day as a student at USM.
Sure thing. So just before I get exactly into homework specifically, to touch on what a typical day looks like. This was sort of mentioned before. or at least alluded to by Mr. Huzio. But the students at USM, they have so many different interests. They are not just students. They could be in the arts. They could have sports practice after school. So in a typical day, students normally don't get home, or at least start even approaching homework until 5:30, 6 o'clock. It's you're sort of still with your USM community, or at least most students are, until 6 o'clock. There is a statistic, I believe it's still true, that 90% of students at USM are involved athletically. That's really impressive if you look across not only local public schools, but also private schools across the country. That's pretty impressive. But to talk about the homework part, it's a subjective question. It obviously depends on sort of who you are as a student and the rigor of the classes you take and your sort of motivation. That being said, though, I do not feel as if I am sort of overburdened by homework. I spend a few hours of homework a night, and I feel as if I am someone that is pretty motivated in school, but I do not feel as if the homework load I am given sort of bogs me down. And to further add on to that, USM is all the students at USM are very academically motivated, but there is not competition. There is not academic competition. You are not really comparing yourself to another. I'm not comparing myself to Caitlin or Dara. I'm working with those two, and oftentimes you work with students on your homework. I think that's probably been one of the most beneficial experiences I've taken away from USM, is I've learned to form study groups. And you learn that sort of, this was expressed in the last segment by the collaborative homework, not just doing worksheets. And that element has been really, really beneficial.
Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate that. And we have about 8 to 10 minutes left. So if you have questions for our students, please type them in and I will stop them mid-sentence so that we can get to whatever it is that you want to know. Dara, could you talk to us a little bit about your experiences with the house system? Mr. Huzio talked about that, and I think it is something that is a big differentiator from USM to any other school that I know of. So Dara, could you talk to us a little bit about your experiences with the house system?
Of course. I joined in middle school, so I've kind of been at USM for a while. But when I was coming to the high school, I always worried about how I would be able to connect to the older years and like the upperclassmen and stuff like that. But then when I joined the house program and I was introduced to my family, I thought it was really awesome because there was like this group of people who kind of like knew me, or I could get to know. And then I could like talk to them whenever I needed in the hallway. And like we have this back to school dance with the house program where we all kind of dress up together as a family and then go to a dance, or at least before COVID hit. And I thought that was really a really fun experience. And I feel like the house program in general is just really fun because it brings like a new sense of community too. And like, I honestly don't think like being competitive is very bad. So like when the houses are competing for points, I feel like that kind of helps like drive the community even a little bit closer together. Because we kind of all have like a shared goal to win the house cup this year and get out of uniform days the next year and things like that. And so I feel like the house program is just really enjoyable. And I definitely feel like it's a crucial part of the upschool USM community. And even our advisings are arranged in houses. So when we're in our advisings, we can kind of like plan house activities together or ways that we want to compete and things like that. And I just think it's cool because like even the house activities are like ranged over different spectrums. Like there are athletic competitions, there are like trivia competitions, there are like one time we had to dress up and go on like a walkway and people would like cheer and things like that. And it's just really fun and really diverse set of activities. And I feel like it's just a very crucial part of our community.
That's great, thank you. Caitlin, since you came from a public school and you're now experiencing USM, and I imagine many of the people on this Zoom are thinking about different types of options, including public. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about what your thoughts were about USM before you came here, and then what you think now that you've been here. Did you have any
Yeah.
preconceived notions?
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think listening to Mr. Zarwal talk about it, it was a very similar idea. I wasn't sure what it was going to be like coming in. The funny thing is I hadn't actually heard of USM before deciding to transfer. And I just live in Cedarburg, so I'm like 15 minutes away. And I just have never heard of it. And my parents brought it up and they said, oh, it's this great school. We should, transfer you there. And I honestly knew nothing about it. So I kind of didn't have time to have preconceived notions. But then once I shadowed, I knew I wanted to go to USM because everyone was just so nice. Like that's how, like the way Mr. Zarwal described it is the perfect way. It's like you come in and you're not sure what to expect, because sometimes like in public schools, kids can get a little rowdy and it can feel like the kids run the school. And you come into USM and everyone is so welcoming, so kind, and just they go out of their way to make you feel welcome. And that's exactly when I knew I wanted to switch. And then coming in, I mean, honestly, like my parents can come on here and talk all about how it's the best decision we've ever made, because I just feel like I've gotten so much out of my education that I don't think I would have gotten at the local public school. I just think the support from the teachers is unmatched. The support from other students is unmatched. I mean, I've worked in multiple classes where it's extremely collaborative and you basically rely on each other to do well in the class. And there's that, I think that unites us instead of separating us. And it's not, like Thomas said, it's not a competition. I don't come to school thinking, oh, I need to be better than this person, I need to be better than that person, because in the end, we all have the same goal, and it's to do well in life, and it's to be successful and help everyone else. So I think it's been a great place for me.
Thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate that. We do have a question in chat that I think is best suited for Mr. Huzio, although if the students would like to participate, they can. But how are students assigned to a house? The question was, are they assigned by interests? Is there intentionality behind it? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so we do not have a sorting hat, although plans for getting one are in the works, but I can't comment any further on that at this time. No, house assignments are actually just based on advising groups, and I think the benefit of that is that students in advising groups are in the same house, so that there's another layer of belonging that they share. So students in Miss Yuan's advising group are all in the same house, for example, or students in Miss Titus's advising group are all in the same house. And I know the house coordinators try to keep faculty in the same house, like throughout their time as they cycle through different advising groups. And myself personally, I'm in Ledger House. And I remember in my second year, they tried to move me to Academy House. And I said, no, thank you. I have a strong allegiance to Ledger House. This is my home. This is where I belong. And just last year, we were able to win the House Cup. Even though we went virtual in March, there was still a continuation of the House program when we went to all virtual, and that was really exciting. And I do not think there is an asterisk next to our championship. And this year, even though we're limited by physical distancing in the building, we are still doing house activities, and that's a real highlight for the upper school. I think when those days happen, everybody's wearing their house gear, and then at the end of the day, there's a fun planned activity that corresponds.
Thank you for that. I too am a proud member of Ledger, but I would also just add that to the heart of the question, or the nature of the question, it was asking what intentionality is done behind it, and I would say that happens more so with the advising program. When students are placed in advising, we are trying to mesh current 8th graders with new students coming in from the outside. So the information that's given to us on the applications for admission for 9th grade is crucial for us in learning a little bit about the personalities and things like that, because we want kids to benefit from the massive diversity that we have at our school, but we also want them to be able to connect with other students as well as that faculty member who's going to be their advisor. So that is very intentional. And then because of that is why we like to keep that entire advising into the specific houses. So I just wanted to add that little piece to it, because I'm on the beginning front end of that when we talk about what kids would be best with what type of student and that sort of thing when we get into it. I do need to stop here. I apologize that I couldn't hear from Dara and Thomas multiple times, but we do have to stick to our schedule. But we will be having a student life webinar coming up later on this fall. And maybe we can talk to these three to come back and join us for that, where we can get a lot more in depth on that. But for now, I wanted to say thank you to Caitlin, Dara, and Thomas, as well as Mr. Huzio. I appreciate your time. So with that, right now we are going to transition into our parent panel. We are fortunate enough to have two parents here with us. Our first parent is Ivana Marich. She has, I believe, 5 children at USM and a current sophomore. And we are also lucky to have Shar Borg here with us. She is the mother of an alum as well as a current 11th grader. So we're lucky to have both of these two here. And what we are going to do for this is in a normal open house, when we have everybody in attendance physically, this is where I simply throw out the option for you to ask questions of our current parents, and you're able and they'll answer them to the best of their ability. After this, we will be answering just general questions on process. I saw a question on how does a student from Montessori school, how do they do here and that sort of thing. So we will get to all of those questions at that point. But right now, if you have questions as parents that you'd like to ask our current parents, this is a great opportunity for you to do that. But Ivana, I'm going to ask you real quick just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning. So I have a son who's in 10th grade, 2 daughters in middle school, and then 3 little kids in lower school. And this is our 12th year at USM. My son has been at USM since JK, or which I think is called K4. And I've really seen him blossom through every single division. So I was actually kind of sad being a part of this panel, because now that he's a sophomore, I recognize that he only has 2 more years to go. So I'll leave it at that so I don't cry.
Thank you. Shar, would you mind also introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your family?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Shar Borg. So I have 4 kids. 2 of my kids have been at university school. I have a daughter who graduated last year, 2020, and I have a son who's a junior this year. I have a son who is in 7th grade at a different school, but likely will attend university school for high school.
Great. Thank you both very much for that. While I don't want the answers to this next question to be overly long, but because we'll get to other things, but I am curious, because we are in the midst of a pandemic and we could be stuck with this for a few more years. We just don't know. How did you two feel as parents? What was your comfort level with our school's response to COVID and some of the precautions that we've taken that are taking place? I'll start with you, Ivana. Why don't you start with you?
Sure, thank you. You know, I can't say enough good things about USM and the response to this pandemic. And so last year, when the kids had to go online, they really missed school. And, you know, the online program was fabulous. And I think I may have even taken it for granted, in that, speaking with other parents who don't have children at USM, our online program was very interactive. So their day at school was pretty much replicated at home. And so it wasn't just, here's some worksheets that you need to take care of and turn it in, and you can go through and finish that particular academic year. And so the online program was outstanding. However, there's no substitute for in-person learning. And so the kids could not be happier to be at school. I think that the following of CDC guidelines, the use of masks, social distancing, the fact that university school has a big campus and has the real estate to be able to implement social distancing, I think we're very lucky to have that ability. But there is no school that I would be more comfortable sending my kids to during this time than USM.
And
thanks, Ivana. Shar, do you have anything?
I do, because Ivana and I are having, it sounds like, different experiences with our kids, but equally exceptional. So Of course, my kids had to go to online learning like most kids did last year. This year, University School gave us the option of doing school virtually or doing it in person. And for our family, we are a multi-generational family. My mother lives with us. She has some underlying conditions. And then I also have a daughter who is a heart transplant recipient, Lizzie, who graduated from the University School, and she's immunosuppressed. So for us, the option really needed to be to do school virtually. And it's, again, been as great an experience as we could hope for. Micah has been able to be really engaged in his class. I would say maybe 20% of the kids in his class are doing school virtually. The other 80% are in school. And while he misses them, and you know, there are definitely obviously always challenges to having to learn virtually, I feel like the school, the teachers, his classmates have done a really great job of trying to make sure that his needs are being met. So for example, this year he's taking AP Calculus, and he, you know, has needed some one-on-one with his teacher, and she has set up time to meet with him one-on-one virtually several times a week. At the same time, he's involved in study groups with kids from class virtually. Kids who are actually in school are taking the time to do virtual study groups with Micah. So I have to say, I could not be more pleased with how this process is going. It's as good as you could hope for.
Great, thank you very much. And if there are follow-up questions on how we've handled the pandemic, do feel free to type them in the Q&A. But I would like to shift this now more to the experience as parents. How have you, talk a little bit about the parent engagement that you've had with the school, with other parents, as well as your connection to the school with faculty, advisors, that sort of thing. Shar, I'm gonna start with you on that one.
Sure. So I would say that university school, my kids didn't go there for grade school. My kids didn't go there for lower school or middle school. They came in as high schoolers. And I have found people to be very welcoming. We've been invited to be a part of the community in different ways. For example, there's a mom's prayer group for the kids at the school, and someone knew that that was important to me, and so I was invited to be a part of that, and that's sort of become my core group. You know, at the same time, I feel like I walk into the building and people know me, the teachers know me, advisors know me. When it came time to start applying for college for Lizzie, I felt like we had great access to our advisor. You know, it never felt like we were a burden to anyone, but people genuinely really wanted us to feel like we were a part of the community and that our kids are getting what they need.
Thank you very much for that. Ivana, can you talk a little bit about your experience on that front?
Yeah, sure. I share the same sentiment in that it's a very welcoming school. And whether you have some good news or bad news to share, there are always resources at USM and people who are looking after your family and your children. And so inevitably in raising children, there's going to be bumps along the road. And again, and this is the trust that I place in this school, in that any problem that my family might have, or any problem that my son in particular, since this is upper school, may have, I have no reservation about reaching out to his advisor or the particular subject matter expert for the class that he may be taking. And during those times where perhaps he might be struggling a little bit, those advisors or teachers have reached out to me as well. So I really liked earlier how Mr. Zarwell had said that really the purpose is to help these kids advocate for themselves. That doesn't mean they're just left on their own. So that's a useful skill, not just for school, but for life as well. But in the event that there is a struggle, the school will reach out to you so that you can help and be collaborative in the success of your student, whatever that might look like.
Ivana, thank you so much. This next question is going to be directed at you, Shar. And I'm going to ask you because you did come from another school in the grade school years, and you had to choose between a lot of options. And so what I'm curious about is, first of all, what advice would you give parents looking at schools, as especially the wide range of options that they have? And then the second piece is, why did you, Shar, choose USM for high school for your children?
Sure, that's a great question. So yes, you can imagine there were many high school options for us. In fact, our oldest did go to a different high school. He went to Marquette University High School. It was certainly a fine experience for him, but I have 4 kids, right? And each of my kids is different. And so I really needed to think about what school would be the best fit. And the kids needed to think about what would be the best fit for them. So, you know, when I say each of my kids is different, I mean, in terms of, you know, academics and creativity and personality. And I will tell you, I have 3 sons and 1 daughter. So, you know, Lizzie wasn't going to go to Marquette High, but we did consider, you know, the sister school. We considered, you know, some public schools in our community, and, you know, other private schools. And, you know, when visiting youth school, we really felt like Lizzie was going to get, she was just going to be seen. You know, she had come from a very small school, you know, excellent school, but very small. And so we didn't want her to be thrown into this sort of massive, you know, high school experience. So youth school was big enough that she could get involved in the arts. You know, she did a lot of first stage. She was really big in theater. She's a photographer. And youth school had all of those options. But also we really value education, and academically, it felt like she was going to get what she needed to ultimately get into the college that she wanted to attend, and, you know, have the career that she wants to have. In the meantime, I have Micah, who is now a junior at youth school, and he wants to be an engineer. Came out of the womb wanting to be an engineer. And so, you know, seeing the Innovation Center and the robotics team and the different options offered for honors and AP, math and science, that's a great fit for Micah. And so, you know, for us, it was just almost like a one-stop shop. Even though we have these kids who are really different, it felt like at university school, we had the option to have different opportunities for our different children.
Thanks, Shar. And I just ask you to just touch again on any advice you might give to people who are going through this process.
Yeah, I would definitely say, 1, for sure, involve your kids. I mean, as parents, we ultimately feel like we know best, but they know themselves better than we do. And I would say certainly visit the schools. And in my experience, what you see is what you get. And when people show you who they are, believe them. And so I would say just be very intentional, very deliberate. You know, we did have the option to send our kids to some pretty exceptional public schools. But ultimately, we found that university school was certainly worth the investment for our kids' education.
Shar, if you can weave in a Maya Angelou quote at 10 o'clock on a Saturday, I'm beyond impressed. Well played. So Ivana, I do also want to encourage, we have a few minutes left for our parents to submit questions, so do feel free to do that. But Ivana, would you please touch a little bit, you touched a little bit on parent culture here. Could you expand on that and just talk to me in general terms what the parent culture is like? And I know that you have the benefit of being cross-divisional, so you get a wide range of parents. But can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would start with, just like there are clubs in upper school that attract kids of various abilities or interests, you know, you could be a part of the Parents Association, for example, and I think that's a really great way to get to know fellow parents. And the beauty about the Parents Association at USM is that you can break it up by division, and every division has its own special circumstances associated with it. So as a new parent coming in, especially during a pandemic, which I think would be really difficult to make some of these connections, the Parents Association would be a great place to start, in that everybody there is welcoming. You can meet people virtually. You can work on projects together. We were listening to the kids talk about project-based learning. You know, within the Parents Association itself, you can take on projects as well to benefit the school while at the same time building this community among yourselves.
Great. Thank you so much, Ivana. I'm going to close here with our parents, since those are the questions that I had that I wanted to submit with you. And then we are going to transition into process and answer any other just general questions that we can. But before I do, I just want to thank Sharborg and Ivana Maric, both of you. Thank you so much for being part of this. And Shar, again, beyond impressed. Maya Angelou, well played. Nice job, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To the rest of our folks that are attending right now, I would like to just turn this over to you for general questions and things like that. And Jackie, I see your question. We are going to get to that in 1 second. But I would like to just turn this over to my colleague, Mr. Cutler. Would you please talk a little bit about the process for application, and then we will get to some of those specific questions that have come up that we said we'd wait to answer at the end.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I know I've been quiet here. My name is Sylvester Cutler. I'm Associate Director of Enrollment Management. This is my 11th year at University School. I've taught, I've been a basketball coach, I've been an Assistant Dean of Students. I've worn multiple hats, as much as my colleague Eric Peters will allow me to do. So I'll be the one you'll be working with primarily through the process. Obviously in the age of COVID, things have shifted. So the entire process can be completed online. So I recognize some of the attendees' names in our Ravenna system, but if you go to our website, Ravenna is where we do our entire admissions process. So the very first step should be the application form. It gives us just some general information about your family, why you're looking at university school. It should take no more than 5 minutes to complete. Once you complete that form, you would have the opportunity in Ravenna to set up a time for a virtual interview. So we do require a virtual one-on-one interview. It's a 30-minute total interview. The first 20 minutes is with the student, and then the last 10 minutes, parents are welcome to join and ask any questions they may have at that point. We do have student essays that are required as part of the process. We give you 4 options of an essay, a prompt, and then you pick 2 of the 4. We do look at last year's report card and then your most recent report card, so Q1, which we'll be wrapping up in the next couple of weeks. And then we ask for 2 teacher recommendations, preferably from a math and English teacher, and those forms can be submitted through Ravenna as well. And then this is our 2nd year, but we do require a character assessment that is done through SSAT. It's called the Character Snapshot. It's a 30-minute assessment with about 20 situational judgment type questions for students to it's like a what would you do in different types of scenarios. And then you'll notice there isn't a standardized test, and that's intentional. We moved away from standardized testing about a year and a half ago and shifted to a model that encourages more thorough analysis of a family, but also just in-depth learning of the student. We want to get to know the full student. So, Eric, I'm not sure if I missed anything, but those are kind of the general admission steps. It can be completed online. We kind of walk you through and guide you through the process. But yeah, Eric, I'll let you touch on anything I might have missed.
The only thing I would say is that we do have in-person tours. We do have COVID restrictions for that, meaning that there are certain times that we cannot offer a campus tour. And there are some COVID protocols like taking your temperature and things like that, but we do welcome you on campus for a tour of campus. It's just the times are pretty much prescribed, and that's just because of density in hallways and things like that. We have to be very mindful of that. I'm sure we can all appreciate that part. The other thing that I want to get to is some of the questions that came up that were asked during this. For example, is it better to acclimate to USM as an 8th grader versus a 9th grader? And I do want to answer that because many of the questions that are like this are going to start with the first 2 words of it depends. And it really does. It depends on the student. It depends on the family. It depends on what your motivating factor is to get here. I will tell you that it's always better if you're worried about getting a spot, because we do have more applications than we have spots in our 9th grade. That's true of every year. Getting in an 8th grade does give you the option of having the opportunity for that spot before we admit students from to ninth grade. Having said that, we do typically admit a bit between 25 and 30, or enroll 25 and 30 students every year for ninth grade. But I always feel that from an acclimation standpoint, the earlier you're here and understanding our style of learning, the better. Our classrooms, as you've heard, I mean, we're not hiding it. Our classrooms are loud, they're messy, and that's by design. We want our kids interacting. We want them working in groups. We want them to be disagreeing with the teacher. I mean, these things are encouraged because that's what learning is. The one rule we have is civility, especially in an election year. Civil is something that's in short supply a lot. In my advising group, they want to talk about the election, for example, and I'm telling them, you can say whatever you want so long as you never say the two words, "you're wrong." You can say, "I disagree because," or "I agree because," but you may never say you're wrong. So we're teaching that in a lot of different ways. One of the other things that we didn't touch on was our lunch program. Our tables have students sitting at them, and the tables are assigned. There's always an adult at the table in a normal non-COVID year, but there's always an adult at the table. So in other words, new students never have to worry about where they're sitting. This gets back to controlling the culture. You know, at some of the bigger schools, kids own the culture and it can be toxic. And here we own it. And that's one of the ways. But the advising program, the house system, which you heard about, all of those things are other ways and extensions of owning that culture.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
I just want to jump in because there was a question that came through about students in Montessori.
Just going there.
We see the acclimation of students coming from Montessori to go seamlessly, but as Eric said, it depends. But some of those skills, self-advocacy, self-motivation, it helps them. You know, in general, the big transition point that we see with students coming into our upper school brand new is that self-advocacy skill set, being able to meet with a teacher, schedule time, advocate for yourself. There's usually a learning curve for students who typically come from some of the schools that feed into our school. And it takes some students a short amount of time to pick it up. It takes some other students a couple years. It's really dependable, but we do offer a lot of opportunities to personalize your kind of USM experience. And so it's a unique program in that regard. We are an and school. You can do this and that, and we offer a wide menu of things. One of the things I do want to touch on with some of the other questions that are coming on, someone asked about USM tuition and different financial aid options. Our USM tuition for the ninth grade next year will probably be just over $26,000 for that year, $26,600, I believe, as we adjust for cost of living and things like that. But we do offer a very robust financial aid program along with a lot of different scholarships. And if you want to schedule a virtual one-on-one session to talk about financial aid, scholarships, and things like that, please feel free to email me. We will be doing probably a webinar highlighting that, and there will be some messages and emails coming out about different deadlines and things like that. And speaking of deadlines, we do consider applications on a rolling basis, but our priority date is November 13th. So if you are really interested in university school, I would encourage you to start the process and look for that November 13th date. And I see some other questions are starting to come in.
I was just going to say that the typical freshman class will, in a non-COVID year, is going to be around 110 students. That means that an average class size of about 15 to 17 is the average class size. We talked a little bit about that. How many AP classes are offered? I wanted to talk about this because a question came up earlier regarding the International Baccalaureate program, and we typed the answer that said that we don't do International Baccalaureate for some very real reasons. And one of those reasons is that the curriculum is incredibly prescribed. It's a strong program, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't give our faculty, the teachers, the flexibility within the classroom to pivot to meet kids where they're at times. So that's one of the reasons we chose not to do that. There are other reasons as well. We already have a difficult time explaining what an independent school is. So now explain independent and International Baccalaureate is, because independent is not the same as private. Private is maybe the big umbrella, but independent is one of the things underneath that umbrella. There are parochial schools, parish schools, things like that, all those different kinds of schools that are considered private. And so independent schools are just different, which is one of the primary reasons we were able to pivot as quickly as we could, as quickly as we did to COVID, and also be able to reopen the way we did, is because we don't have to wait for anything to happen for us to be able to get decisions made. We can make them. And I see that Sue is talking about the Global Scholars Program, which does get to that, and she's right. The Global Scholar Experience is getting at that international piece. So thank you, Sue, for posting that. I appreciate that. So how many AP classes are offered? It depends on the given year, because there are some years where we will offer, some AP classes are cyclical, but I would say it's right between 25 and 30 on a typical year. So it depends on what classes kids are looking for that. But one of the things that I would say about our AP classes is that they're not the same as, in my opinion, at least based on what I've seen with the test scores, it's not the same as what you would find at other schools that offer AP classes, because we supplement our curriculum. We find that the College Board prescribed curriculum that they give is something that we've said we're not going to teach AP classes if we can't expand in certain areas. So we do that, and that is a huge benefit of the way that we are. It's a huge benefit for us when we do our AP classes. I did see that are there travel opportunities for students, and through our Global Scholars Program, yes, it's all, in my opinion, you can go pretty much anywhere that we can set up that's safe for kids. Even in our middle school, my wife is a Spanish teacher there, and she takes kids to Costa Rica. We have a Panama trip that does a lot of outreach and service for orphanages in Panama. Our kids have gone to Africa. We've gone to China. So it's been all over the world. The world is our classroom, and we do view it that way. Right now, we're having a hard time with that, of course, but as soon as we're able to safely do it again, we will be back to that. The question came up, Sylvester, can you explain the 4 certificate add-ons? I believe she is referring to the diploma designations. Would you want to talk a little bit about that?
I can, and Sue Boley's still on, so I'm going to bring her back.
As a presenter, yeah.
Yeah, and she can talk on it. But we offer 4 certificate add-ons for students, and there's a sequence of courses that they can take and requirements they have to fulfill, and they will have the opportunity to have this diploma designation. So they do have to fulfill our basic requirements for graduation, but these are kind of enhancements or things that they do in addition to that. And I'll let Sue kind of talk in more detail about that program or those opportunities.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So the 4 transcript designation programs do have some required curricular work, as Sylvester was indicating, but really it goes above and beyond curriculum and classes to very experiential learning. And I mean, each of them is so impressive, and students, I mean, I had 2 children who were global scholars, and so the Global Scholars Seminar that Ben Zarwell talked about, where they do deep dive research, project-based, those soft skills that they learn for communication. I mean, they took that to college, and that served them so well. And so each of these transcript designation programs offers students these extra opportunities to really grow, not just as scholars, but as people, to better understand their interests, the world they live in, and they're really amazing opportunities. It's so unique. I mean, other schools just don't have those types of opportunities, public or private.
I agree, and I think that if you're doing the innovation and design one, what's fascinating to me is that you're in your art classes, for example, you have a couple of added projects that you have to do in our Lubar Center for Innovation and Design. And so it's just a range of different types of things and experiences that our kids get. But in my opinion, it does set us apart from any other school in the area. So with that, we are at the end of our time. I told and promised all of you a hard stop at 10:30. I will tell you that I will stick around for another 5 minutes with my colleague Sylvester. And if there are follow-up questions, we'll be here. But other than that, I do appreciate all of you for coming to this today, sitting through an hour and a half of of people talking at you, and in some cases typing some questions. But I do appreciate that. There's so much more we want to show you, and I can't wait for the time to do that safely with all of you. So with that, I bid you adieu. Have a nice Saturday. I appreciate your time.